Thanks. So, yeah, what I've been working on for the past 2 years is a decentralized cloud storage platform. But before I get into that, I just want to give some background about myself. So I've been with Bitcoin since about 2011. I've been in the research community and on the Wizards channel since about 2013. And then in 2014, a friend of mine and myself, we founded a company to build this decentralized storage protocol. And the team has since grown to 3 people. So Saya is the name of our decentralized storage protocol. We're trying to emulate Amazon S3, which is a centralized cloud storage platform. You give your data to Amazon and then they hold it for you. And we're trying to do the same thing where data is accessible immediately. So it's low latency, high throughput. And we've had a functioning prototype since June 2015. So here's a screenshot of our wallet, and then so you're a host, you can offer your storage to the network. So here's a screenshot of that interface. I've got 20 gigabytes on this node. I took it last night, and then here's the renter. So it's some music I uploaded. That's my music. So cool. So we're going to rewind to the modern cloud storage. So normally the data is owned by one company, so just Amazon or Microsoft. It's usually unencrypted and unauthenticated. You just give them the raw data and they hold on to it. And so it doesn't need to be, but usually it is unencrypted. And then often your data is sitting in one legal jurisdiction, so even if it's replicated inside of the data center, it's still just in one geographic location. And then Amazon is a profit-making company. Well, maybe not, but Microsoft is a profit-making company, and sometimes the profit motives may not align with your personal needs. And then also, I think in general the cloud storage space has very inflated prices. I don't think the prices make sense when you look at how much hard drives cost and how much 3x replication should cost. The numbers are really big. To get it from Amazon or Microsoft. So we want to sort of decentralize that. To me, one of the core advantages of decentralization is that the person who owns the thing, controls it. And so, in Bitcoin, when I have 10 Bitcoins and they've been in my wallet for a year, so it's like 50,000 confirmations. I feel confident that no one can steal those. To steal those, you would either need my private key, or you would need to reorg 50,000 blocks to go back and undo the transaction and then rebury it. So that's very powerful to me. And so we want to do something similar with data, where I know that the data is mine and its destiny is mine to control. So yeah, we want to eliminate the trust where right now we trust Amazon with our data. And I don't think we need to. And so you also want to spread out the power in the ecosystem. So unlike Bitcoin, with data, you have some core limitations. The whole point of the cloud is that I give the data to someone else, and then at some point I ask for it, and they give it back to me. And as soon as it's leaving my hands, there's nothing I can do to control it. So if Amazon or whoever has the data decides to unplug the drive or destroy the drive or hold the data hostage, there's no amount of cryptography that's going to save you from that situation. They can make that call, and that's just part of having data in the cloud. Is you need to know that the people who have it can unplug at any time. So you can't attain perfect trustlessness. And then the other thing that they can do is once they have the data, they can share it without your permission. And if it's encrypted, this may not be very dangerous. But the fact remains that once someone has the data, you have no control over who they give it to. So those are 2 things that you just can't fix. But I think that we can do better than Amazon, even if we can't get to this perfect situation where you have perfect control over your data. I think we can do a lot better than we're doing today. So with Saya, your data goes to many hosts. It can cover many legal jurisdictions. Everything is encrypted and hashed or authenticated by default. So a much cleaner ecosystem. And we have these file contracts that sort of align the incentives with the consumer. We make sure that the host profit model is oriented around protecting the uploader's data. And then we also create this open marketplace where people who can provide services for cheaper get more profit. And so just like with Bitcoin mining, we hope to create this very aggressive race to the bottom that consistently keeps up with new technological trends and technological improvements. So that's sort of what we're aiming at with our platform. And the core cryptographic tool that we use to achieve this is called the file contract. So when it's me and a host and I'm giving my file to a host, I'm going to create a file contract and I'm going to put money in that's for the host, and the host is going to put money in that's sort of like a promise that he'll keep the data. Then we're going to take the file contract and put it on the blockchain. And then after some period of time, say like 6 months, the blockchain is going to trigger and say, okay, host, prove to me that you still have the data. And the host needs to provide a proof that it has the data. And then if it provides the proof, it gets paid. And if a certain period of time, like say 3 days goes by and the host doesn't provide the proof, then the money is lost. It's either returned to me or it goes to the void. But regardless, the host is not getting paid. Let's see what okay, so how the storage proof works. So the file is broken up into 64-byte segments, and then those 64-byte segments are hashed into a Merkle tree. And I have a picture on the next slide. And then what the blockchain does is it picks one of those segments at random and says, host, prove that you have this segment. And so this kind of looks like this. At the bottom layer, we have the actual raw data. The blockchain is going to choose Y3, which is the bottom red circle, and then the host is going to provide Y3 and all the hashes, one hash at each layer, and you have this Merkle proof. And so the host provides the data and then proves that it's in the Merkle root, which the Merkle root is in the file contract. So the host has proven storage for one random segment. It's just 64 bytes, but the host has no way to predict which segment. We seed the random number using the block ID of the block before the contract expires. So right at the beginning, if the host is trying to cheat, it's got no way to predict. And so if the host is only storing half the file, the host has a 50% chance of being able to cheat and being able to submit a proof successfully. But because the host put in money, it's not just me who put in money, the host also put in money, which means if the host fails, not only does he lose my revenue, but the host will also lose the collateral. And so if the collateral is significantly larger than the potential revenue, cheating has a very high negative expected value. And so there's no economic reason for a host to try and cheat. So that's how we align the incentives in our network, and we get hosts to hold on to the data. So to upload the file to the network, we break it into like 20 pieces or 30 pieces or 50 pieces. We encrypt each piece separately, and we give each piece to a different host. And we use something called Reed-Solomon codes, which means, for example, in a 7 of 21 scheme, out of 21 pieces, any 7 pieces I can use to get the original file back. And that means that if 14 hosts cheat or blow up or are unavailable, I'm okay because 7 are online, and it doesn't matter which 7. I just need any 7. And the math works out really, really nicely where even if the hosts are only 95% reliable, which compared to Amazon is like totally abysmal, this is something that you could definitely do from home, and 95% allows you to lose power like once a month for a day, and you still get 95% uptime. So on a 7 to 21 scheme where each host is 95% reliable, we actually get 11 nines of reliability on the file as a whole for 3 redundancy. And if we're using, say, 100 hosts, it's even better. We can get 11 nines of uptime with 95% reliability on our hosts for a redundancy of like 1.4. So that's a significant cost savings as you expand the number of hosts. And then the redundancy also provides protection against something else I'm calling a hostage attack, which is where the host has the data, they're storing it, they're keeping it, they're able to do the proof of storage, but they just don't want to give it to you. They're trying to extort you, and they're asking, say $1 million to get your pictures back. And you don't need to care as long as at least M hosts, at least 7 out of these 21 hosts aren't extorting you. You just ignore the hosts that are extorting you, and then you mark it down. I'm never going to use these hosts again, and like your file's safe. You can still access your file, and you've avoided extortion. So I kind of breezed past a really big problem here, which is how do we pick hosts? So Sybil attack has been mentioned a few times today. Some malicious actor could spin up 10 million nodes. It's relatively cheap. They could pretend to be 10 million hosts, and I pick 21 hosts at random. And because there are only, say, 200 real hosts and 10 million fake hosts, more than likely, at least 15 of those hosts are going to be the attacker's hosts. And so now the attacker can do malicious things with my data. And besides Sybil attacks, the attacker can provide like really low prices or other means of manipulation to get me to pick bad hosts. So as a renter, I have this problem where I'm looking at this field of hosts, and I want to know which ones can I trust my data with. So this is like the weakest part of our protocol, but I do think that the solutions we have are good enough in a practical environment. And so again, it's not theoretically perfect, but I do think that it will hold up in most attack situations in the real world. Most practical ways that an attacker might come at us, we can account for. And so the renter can track real-time statistics on the host when the renter logs in. It can do off-chain proof of storage challenges. It can check the uptime. It can measure the latency. And it's just constantly scanning the network to make sure that the hosts are there and the hosts are responding. It can do trial downloads to make sure none of the hosts are trying to hold data hostage. And then for the proof of burn, for the Sybil attacks, you do proof of burn, which proof of burn means the host just takes some money, presumably some percentage of their revenue, like 2%, and just throws it away. Provably makes it unspendable. And so that sounds kind of crazy. Why would hosts do that? But it allows us to tell when hosts are, it makes it very hard for an attacker to fake 10 million hosts. If we have an economy that's, say, $10 million a year, and each of the honest hosts are burning 2% of their revenue, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so if an attacker wants to appear to be 90% of the economy, the attacker is going to have to provably throw away millions of dollars. And so that provides a huge amount of protection on the network. So renters will probably only use hosts that are regularly doing proof of burn, just because they know that the hosts that are engaging in proof of burn are unlikely to be illegitimate. And then there's another thing we can do. We can add some centralization to sort of help this problem along. So if there are agencies that are doing, like KYC, they're contacting the hosts, they're getting, pictures of the hard drives or whatever, and they're doing certification, and they're doing the constant scanning and doing ratings, et cetera. You can get a better picture of the network. And so an agency can devote a lot more resources than an individual to try and figure out which hosts are safe to use. And that does mean that the renter is going to have to trust the agency. But if there are a bunch of agencies, you can figure out which agencies are good, and if some agencies are bad, there's a low switching cost. It's called trust agility. So if an agency lies to you or takes advantage of you, you just switch to a new agency and you stop using that old agency. So this is centralization, which we like to stay away from. But if it's needed, which I don't think it is, but if it is needed, it's like an avenue to sort of keep the gears spinning. Okay, so one of the final topics is scalability. Blockchains don't scale, and Bitcoin's sort of like grappling with this right now. Sia has the same problem. We're a proof of work blockchain. We take file contracts, we put them on the blockchain. And so there are a few tricks we can use. We have something called revision channels, file contract revisions, which are like payment channels but with data. And that lets a renter make one contract once and then upload as many files as they want, as much data as they want to the host, and it's just 2 transactions on the blockchain. Actually 3, because there's a storage proof. But even so, on our blockchain, there's only room for about 50 million file contracts per year. And so there's an unlimited amount of data per file contract, but 50 million is not that many, especially because most users are going to need at least 20 file contracts per year. If you're uploading data to 20 hosts, then that's 20 file contracts. You can't lump multiple hosts into a single file contract. And then some, if they're doing more high-powered storage, might need as much as like 200 file contracts per year. So our scale is therefore between like 250,000 and 2.5 million users, which is not that great. But our platform in general is targeted towards more enterprises. So 2.5 million is plenty in the enterprise world. But we would like to see improvements that would get us consumer scale as well. And there are potential improvements on the horizon. A lot of work that Bitcoin is doing, a lot of work that we can do that's like special to us, that might get 5x to 100x scalability improvements on our network over the next like 5 years. But even still, 100x falls short of like everybody being able to use the network. So like all blockchain technology, we do have this scalability problem in front of us, but we don't have 2 million users today, so it's not really an issue right now. It's on the horizon. So I think this is the final slide. We have an ecosystem. The whole platform is open source, just like Bitcoin, and we have a community and active developers. And when people contribute things like plugins or desktop widgets or like Fuse, file system and user space implementations, everybody benefits. And then another thing that I think is unique is we have this powerful cloud storage platform which is fast, it's cheap, and it's secure. And even if you don't care that it's decentralized, those things have utility. And so we can sell this platform to people who don't care about decentralization. Because it is a aggressive, highly parallel cloud storage platform. Cool. So I think that what we're working on is pretty sweet. As I said, there are theoretical limitations to what we can do. We can't make remote data trustless, but I do think that we can get a lot further than where we are today with the Amazon model. So thanks. I think I'm kind of under time, but.
I was just wondering if you could compare and contrast Saya with storage.
Yeah, sure. So there's kind of like a friendly but heated competition between us and storage, which is spelled STORJ. And so they actually don't have the file contract. They use a pure pay-as-you-go model. They use something called chain point, which means you take this sort of pseudo contract, you hash it, and you put the hash on the blockchain, and then later you can reference it to, I'm not exactly sure what you do with it. But the big thing is that their network is pay-as-you-go, which means hosts can leave at any time, or if the price shifts and suddenly storage is more expensive, what's to stop a host from taking a more lucrative contract and just dumping the data they have? So I think that storage, STRJ, has a lot. They don't solve some of the core problems associated with getting the incentives right and for protecting decentralized data.
I'm curious as what kind of data people are currently storing on the network, and do you see a future where apps load data directly off the Saya network, or do you think it's kind of going to be a backup layer?
Yeah, so right now I think most people are using it as a backup layer. We are hoping to get a lot more involved in the enterprise space. So we have we're in talks with an agriculture company and with a bioinformatics company, and we're sort of trying to see who has need for especially like really cheap storage, really cheap secure storage, and is willing to sort of take a risk on this new platform, new idea. But yeah, right now it's mostly being used to back up personal data.
Thanks for the unexpected chain point shout out. I'm the co-creator of that protocol. My question is, with things like storage and what you're doing, what's the incentive for me as a consumer, or what's the guarantee that I have long term that if I put my files into this decentralized network, that the network is still going to be there?
So being a decentralized network, there's not like a company that could fail. And even if our company fails, the protocol is going to keep spinning. There's coins still being created and being mined and like all the, there's no central part, there's no servers that we can shut down. Well, I mean, we can shut down our block explorer, but so in that aspect, you're not relying on us to keep the data. You're really relying on the hosts, which is guaranteed by the file contract. If you have this like expensive file contract, especially if you're paying a lot for say like 3 years, presumably as long as the coin still has value, the host has a very good reason, and that's like money, has a very good monetary reason to hold on to your data for the prescribed time. And then if you want to extend it, when there's 2 years remaining, it's actually very easy in our protocol to extend it from 2 years to say like 3 more years.
Is there any contingency that happens provided in the network where if I pay people to put data online and some of the nodes that are hosting my data start to fail, it goes below like a minimum threshold, that I can get my information back or get my money back from the contract?
Yeah, so it's the renter will actually automatically repair stuff. So if you have data on say 21 hosts and you need 7, and then the number of hosts online drops to say 14, the renter, as long as it's running, you do have to have it idling in the background for it to do this. But then it will detect the problem. It'll download a full copy of the file and then restore the file back up to full redundancy. But yeah, like I said, you have to run it because you're the only one with the encryption password to put the file back together.
Thanks.
What accounting is there for access? If I upload something and then access it very frequently versus very infrequently?
So right now the network's pretty agnostic to that, but there's no reason that a host couldn't, put a little stipulation in its like announcement that we're a high latency host, or you need to give us 6 hours notice or 6 days notice for us to fetch your data. And based on the renter's internal reputation system, if a host claims to be a low latency host and then they're a high latency host, the renter will just never use that host again. So that it's bad for the host because it's bad for the host to lie because it just will stop getting business after the first round of business. But if the renter is expecting the host to have these delays and the renter is like querying and the host is filling the promises that it made, sure, I think that you could offer high latency storage for less, and that could be roped into the protocol.
Do you see any parallels to IPFS, Filecoin, Juan Bennett stuff?
Yeah, so IPFS I think is completely different, or not completely different, but their goals are different. So we want to create incentives for hosts to keep your data. IPFS I think is looking more to like rewrite HTTP, and so you can on IPFS you can find files by their hashes, and you can find people's work by their public key, but just like the internet, you can find someone's website by going to the URL, but that person has to be running a server for you to reasonably be able to get it. And someone might have a mirror, and so it's the same in IPFS. If you go to a person's file and their server is offline, like you might get lucky if someone's running a mirror, but there's no guarantee that file is going to be there. Whereas on our network, we try and set it up so that there's financial reasons for people to stay there and keep serving the file. So I think that's one of the big differences. And then Filecoin is a project that hasn't seen much attention in like a year. So I think I'm just going to brush that off to the side until it's more active. All right, cool. Thank you.